the fees associated with tech class action lawsuits, and USB-C versus Lightning. This is MacVoices. Today's edition of MacVoices is supported by Zocdoc. Find doctors who are patient-reviewed, take your insurance, and are available when you need them. Download the free Zocdoc app at zocdoc.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is the second in a three-part MacVoices live conversation. This time, we tackle a discussion of the legal fees in tech class action lawsuits, one in particular where the judge seems to agree that maybe those fees were a little bit exorbitant. Then we start a discussion of USB-C versus Lightning. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking.
But
the bigger issue right now is that Chuck's trying to change the subject and we're not letting him.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, I think we've beat it to death, and now we're just into, well, it could be a wink, a nod, it just let's wait till we get there.
What I'm saying is that has nothing to do with this passkey thing. That's all.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah, I get it. But let's wait till we get there, and see a little more. Yeah, because I want to get the rest of the panel in here. So I want to throw a story in there. This is just for me. Okay, this is just mine. And that is,
you go, Chuck.
Yeah,
Go, Chuck.
And this won't surprise anybody that I wanted to mention this. And that is Judge Gonzalez questioning the the $27 million attorney's fee on a $100 million award between Apple and developers. I mean, go Judge Gonzalez, Rogers. This just is, this is exactly what the problem is with class action suits. $27 million out of $100 million. I'm open for comment.
If you
it
can
is
get
less
it.
than 30%.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty routine it's terrible, but but it doesn't seem to have anything to do with Apple.
Well, it's coming out of Apple's pocket one way or another.
Well,
but
that money that money is going to come out of Apple's pocket either way. It's just a question of how much do the lawyers get and how much do the developers get. But
in fact, I would argue it's coming out of the developer's pocket more than Apple's.
Well, you could argue that. I don't disagree. I guess what gets me is that there should. I mean, I understand this is an agreed upon fee, okay, between the developers and their attorneys. But at some point, this just encourages, there should be a limit as to what the attorneys can make on something like this, because 27. You're right, Brittany. That is less than a third. In fact, it's a little more than 20%.
About 25%.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just. I thought it was great to see that somebody might be trying to rein some of this stuff in, because I just got another class action notice today. I could be part of something that just, But David, as I recall, you had sent me a text that you were actually part of a class action suit with Facebook, and you actually got some money back, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, that was that because the state of Illinois has laws about biometrics and facial recognition, and Facebook did not follow the law here. So not only did I get $397 check from the lawyers, my wife as well got $397, as well as many of my other family members. So anybody who's on Facebook. So there is that. That was probably the biggest lawsuit of a case I've ever been a part of, and not even remember opting in. So, but yeah, it's crazy. But I can't imagine what the lawyers were making off of what that settlement was, and that was a big settlement just Illinois alone.
Yeah, well, that was going to be the next question I asked, if you got any disclosure of any kind about what the attorney's fees were.
No, I mean, I actually didn't remember too. It was directly deposited into my checking account. I didn't even think, all of a sudden I'm looking at my bank account and where did this money come from? And then I look Facebook. Oh, okay.
This
and
is
then I
why
Google it.
this is why lawyers make as much as they do, because look how happy Dave is on the $300 something. Because
I'm okay.
I would be
It
too.
is what it is,
No,
but-
right? Like everybody would be, and that's why it is what it is. Because lawyers, if you're part of a class action suit and you're getting something that you didn't think you were going to get at some point,
You never
then,
think you were gonna.
then 2 cents, not just, we've got $2, $3 here or there, $5 here and there.
$15.
It's money that you wouldn't have got either way. So the lawyers are like, we'll take most of it, and they'll be happy with what we give them, and we are.
In that case with Facebook, that was a pretty bad thing they did, because that is a law on the books in Illinois that you have to. There's no disclosure about biometrics and without the person's permission.
Wasn't there wrong with the Apple with iPhones?
But it was small. It was small enough of a class action suit that people were getting barely anything on recovery from
right.
that.
But do you remember like a couple of years ago, like you had a form you could fill out? I remember it was one device, and I had so many that I kept doing them.
Yeah, we kept doing it, and you put the serial number in. Couldn't remember.
Nothing happened. I never got money. I don't know.
I mean, again, I told you, I don't even remember doing it. Honestly, I must have done it because they had my bank account, because they directly deposited my check, and and the wife got an actual paper check. So
with the iPhone thing, I remember us talking about it too, and I think we all did it a couple of years ago. We started putting our numbers in some website, on some lawyer's website, and after they said something would happen. This was like 3 years ago, so I don't know.
So if you want easy access to David's bank account, just tell him he's part of a class action suit, and he'll give you his number.
I'm crafting the email even as we speak.
Nice.
I'll give you my bank account numbers if you
wait
put
for
some
it to
money
go
in
my spam filter.
Yes.
Story of my life.
Just look for the word pants.
Jeff, am I out of line with my feeling on this? I mean, does this just seem
You're
out
not
of line
out
to
of
you?
line.
Okay.
I think it's I don't want to say criminal, because it's like technically not criminal, but it feels criminal that attorneys are making so much money off of these class action lawsuits. What really bothers me is that in many cases, these class action lawsuits are crafted completely by the attorneys, and then they go out hunting for people to bring in, to be the victims in this, or the plaintiffs in these cases, and they're cases that in at least some situations wouldn't actually become class action lawsuits, save for the fact that the attorneys are setting this up so that it will be, and then they get the big cash payout. And as I'm saying this, what it comes down to, I'm realizing, is that it leaves a very bad taste in my mouth looking at class action lawsuits like this as a business model for attorneys, and not a tool that's being presented first as something to help protect consumers.
Well, it's ambulance chasers for the internet.
Ambulance chasing is what I was going to say.
Yeah, and that's a distasteful practice too.
Yeah,
and
like in Dave's case with the Facebook, do you think it was a frivolous lawsuit that they came and did?
They broke the law.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting distinguishing point, Dave, that there was a law in the books. I mean, from what you've said about it, it sounds like it's in bad taste anyway. But it was absolutely a broken law. That's a lot different than what we're seeing in the Gonzalez situation.
Yeah. Some of these are, we have decided this company has broken this particular law or found a way around it or whatever, and now we're going to go find a bunch of people who were affected by that and see if we can get some money for them.
That kind of lawsuit.
The judge agreed that Apple did the wrong thing. So it's just a question of how it should be divvied up.
I think your Chuck's point is the fact of the matter that the lawyers are making $27 million on this lawsuit, and I just think that I agree with you. I think it's a little high. I mean, it's I understand I'm just a little. I'm being nice. It's very high. I mean, that's a big percent, and I don't know how many lawyers were a part of this
It's like a legal phishing scam.
Yeah. So.
Well, and Jeff said it well, that if there is a situation that someone starts a lawsuit and then people join in, that has to be judged kind of separately. But right. when the thing just gets crafted, and you can almost see what happened here, that, whether actually somebody started this lawsuit or not, emails got sent out and said, hey, you don't get paid. If we don't get paid, we'll take X number of percentage. And somebody said, why not? And that's the part that bothers me.
That's how most of them are. That's how most of the lawsuits.
Yeah.
That's most of the lawyers. That's how they work. I mean, basically they don't take upfront fees. If it's a big enough case, and Apple is always a big enough case, they're going to work pro bono. They're going to take it and hope to get the money out of it.
Well, it's not pro bono, but they are taking on the risk, and they're putting the investment. They're paying for researchers and. And 27 million, that's a high number. I'm not a fan, but I'm not sure what the alternative is. That's the way that system is set up. This kind of case happens all the time, constantly. And there's a lot of cases where there would be no lawsuit at all if the system was not arranged this way.
Right. Because people wouldn't feel they wouldn't bother with a lot of these cases. Lawyers wouldn't bother in some cases if the payout wasn't good.
And what we don't know in this is we don't know how many developers were part of this class. Was it 50 or was it 10,000? So, Webb in the chat room says, I don't want to go on a rant here, but class action lawsuits are designed for the attorneys and not the victims.
Bingo.
And
well, that's a little harsh, I think. I mean, there are some cases where they're beneficial and there are many cases where they're egregious, but let's not make absolutes.
No, Webb says it's not a pro bono, but on contingent. Yeah.
Apple has having to change their policies because of this case. So I think, anybody, if you like the changes that were made, and it looks like Mike's leaving. Bye, Mike.
No, I don't.
That's me. I'm leaving.
Jeff has to leave.
Oh, Jeff's leaving.
But we look alike, so I get why you.
Well, I just saw Mike. Bye, everyone. I saw Mike. I saw Mike waving, so I thought.
He was waving to me. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Jeff. Hey, Jeff. Bye, before you go, just give us a quick rundown of where folks can find you, because I don't want them to miss any of your wisdom.
But right here on Tuesdays, on Thursdays on the Big Show and on In Touch with iOS, Fridays on the Mac Show, and also on the Context Machine with Brian Chaffin, Jay Gamet on YouTube and Instagram and Twitter. And there you go. How's that for a fast rundown?
That's a good rundown. Thanks so much, Jeff. Take care.
See everyone later.
Good night.
Okay, but I have a question for Jim. Apart from the lawyer settlement, what do you think about the underlying case?
I'm not sure I know enough to comment. I'm not a fan of Apple's Dev Store policies in general. So
it's just
I'm not sure this is the solution, but there's, I know at one, I think that part got struck down, but I know like a lot of developers when this case was first, before the part of it was struck on appeal, that developers were like getting real excited that they thought they were going to be able to sell outside of this, to distribute iOS apps out of the store. They thought this was going to force that. And a lot of developer podcasts and stuff I listened to were like, "Ooh, yippee!" And I was kind of like, "I don't think this is going to survive," and it didn't. But I do think a lot of developers are, would be on the side of the developers on this case.
Oh, I'm sure. I don't think there's any question about
and I would assume, on your question, Chuck, of how large is the class? Usually in this sort of thing, at this point, I think they have to go out and find as many of those people as they can. Like you ever get a postcard, like you may be entitled because we already won and now we're supposed to find you and give you money. That's a pretty common thing.
Oh, yeah.
And Apple now claims there's 34 million developers, and I'm a little skeptical of that number as far as real developers. Maybe there's 34 million people paying Apple $100 a year, but I don't think there's really 34 million people actually writing apps. But maybe these lawyers are supposed to go out and advertise and whatnot and try and track down all the developers that might have been impacted by this.
That's the kind of thing I'd like to see. Oh, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
I was going to say, typically suits, have a specific time frame. So it's not all developers now in 2020. Right. It's a relevant time frame just around when the suit was filed, the class action.
Yeah, when I've gotten stuff like that, it'll be like, contact us if you use this service between, June 2018 and March 2021 or something like that. That sort of thing.
So
one thing. Speaking of which,
go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, okay. No, go ahead.
Speaking of which, you all may be aware there's been this, a DVD drive class action lawsuit. Maybe you've participated in them. I looked at it, and because during the time period, I had purchased an obscene number of computers. I had over a dozen. I had like 14 or 15 machines that had DVD drives in them. And everything from the law firm was really up and positive. Finally, you got final settlement, and got information earlier this week, to redeem it into an Amazon Cash card or other cards. Grand total was about $12.35. Not even enough for a good lunch, out in Silicon Valley.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by Zocdoc. Find doctors who are patient-reviewed, take your insurance, and are available when you need them. Before you book any brunch, you pore over lists and lists of reviews. So why not do the same thing when you're booking a doctor's appointment? With Zocdoc, you can see real, verified patient reviews to help find the right doctor in your network and in your neighborhood. After all, finding the right doctor is just as, if not more important, than finding the right plate of Eggs Benedict. Zocdoc is a free app that shows you doctors who are patient-reviewed, take your insurance, and are available when you need them. On Zocdoc, you can find every specialist under the sun. Whether you're trying to straighten those teeth, fix an achy back, get that mole checked out, or anything else, Zocdoc has you covered. Find and review local doctors. Read verified patient reviews from real people who made real appointments. Now, when you walk into that doctor's office, you're all set to see someone in your network who gets you. Go to Zocdoc.com/MacVoices and download the Zocdoc app for free. Then start your search for a top-rated doctor today. Many are available within 24 hours. That's Zocdoc, ZocDoc.com/MacVoices. Zocdoc.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Zocdoc for supporting this week's MacVoices. And I think that just really hits
about 25 million.
That hits the nail on the head, Mark. That's the part that, David got I think it's fair to say that's a material amount of money, but the number of times that I've been involved in anything, and that's why I stopped just answering those, because, $5.25, $10.12. Well, it really was not worth my time to even lick the stamp to send back if that's what it took. And that's where I have the objection. I'd love to see some of the news sites really dig into this and do some follow-up, about, okay, so how many class members were there and how much did they get and how much was actually distributed and what did the attorneys pocket? Because my understanding with most of the class actions I've been involved with is, okay, they awarded $110 million. And so, that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to get split up evenly among all the class members. They're going to go out and see how many they can get, but sometimes there's a cap put on how much can be distributed. So I would really like to know, what at the end of the day, what the developer who was part of this class got versus what the attorneys got, because I got to believe the attorneys are pocketing that 27, and then they're going out and doing what they can to distribute the rest.
Well, the numbers are obviously in favor of the attorneys, because there's maybe a dozen, 2 dozen, I doubt 2 dozen, but versus tens of thousands of developers. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously very much biased. Actually, for anyone who wants to see things, just go see the I forget whose network produces it, Showtime or I don't know, the season, the Better Call Saul, because they have a class action lawsuit called Mesa Verde, which is kind of integral to the plot over its multiple seasons. And again, you see the similar machinations of all the greed and everything driving it really up, and then all the things that sort of drive it down, and then the bickerings between attorneys. And it would do a much better job, I think, than some blog site that will come out with juicy clickbait-worthy headlines about how much these greedy attorneys, how many greedy attorneys actually split the $27 million.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say greedy, that's a value judgment, but I should just talk about the number. It's probably way fewer than, it's probably way fewer than the panelists we have here on a busy night.
Essentially, this is sort of an odd system for privatizing enforcement of laws. I think ideally it would be better if, district attorneys or something, if Apple breaks a law, then somebody should go after them. But we've decided that we have this system where lawyers can, in some cases, like look at that, what was that woman they made a movie about that Julia Roberts played? And that was class action lawsuit that, went after a company that was polluting. And
Aaron Brockovich.
Yeah. And, they got that stopped. So, regardless of who got what money, I think that was a public good that, that was eventually stopped. But it's sort of a weird system that we have in our country where this is done for profit by private individuals. But that's the law here. So,
it's the way it is.
Well, that may segue into one of the other topics. Do you really want the government trying to mess around, arbitrating what should or should not be done? Do you think ultimately, it is? Your point is acknowledged, Jim, that this is sort of a private way of settling on a public law dispute issue. The question is ultimately what is going to be more efficient? The powers of the government or the powers of individuals, fighting it out in a courtroom.
But are the individuals fighting it out? I mean, you're getting 1 or 2 individuals, and they're trying to get this giant freaking crowd, and they're basically lining their pockets. I mean, look at what Dave was just talking about. What do you get? Did you say 374?
Oh, you're talking Facebook.
Yeah. And the attorneys ended up with 27 million.
Well, we
and
don't
like
know
someone
that
has said,
sure,
it's
Frank.
not that okay. Well,
Yeah,
we know
but
that they didn't walk away with about $20,000.
Right.
But they could have walked off with zero.
That's the whole point. Is it's typically they're taking on contingency, and contingencies are maybe anywhere from 25% on the low side to 40, maybe approaching 50% on the high side. So in that regard, everyone's interest is bound together. And the fact that there may be tens of thousands of class members per attorney, that's just the way the math works out. And ultimately, people have the decision, like Chuck was saying, he gets something, this is not worth my time. It's going to take too long to go and get the data to figure out if I even qualify. I'm not going to do it. But many people do, and that's just like it or not. That's sort of the way the system works.
Yeah, but it's
the part that bothers me though is it's an incentive for the attorneys to build the class.
I agree.
mean,
I think that's the wrong part here, and in so many other class actions is it's sort of it's a full employment and strike it rich for attorneys.
But if there's no case, then it doesn't matter how big their class is.
No, but unfortunately, there's a tendency right now that if you're going after a big business, there's a presumption that big business is bad, that big business has done something, has wronged the little guy. And, that just not sure I buy that completely.
I'd like to point out, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Frank.
I'd like to point out there was a giant, now there may be several of them, giant class action suits for hernia for the mesh that they used to put over it. And it failed in a lot of people. Now, to say that the lawyers are trying to help, I call bull on that because I watch my TV at night and they're putting on commercials here in Philly for like 3 or 4 different things saying, hey, we get you the money you deserve that you are owed. Did you get this done between this year and that year? Well, you deserve money and we can get it for you. And it's like, it's gotten so commercially crass. It's like, I can't swallow it anymore. I don't believe it.
They may have been
couldn't advertise.
They may have been required to advertise. That sounds like a case that was already settled, and the judge said, "Now you go find everyone."
No.
There's 2 or 3 specific subjects that there's these law firms down here in Philly, at least. They specialize on just one specific thing, and that's all they hammer. And they'll do like 6 different variations of that commercial, but it's always hammering the same lawsuit. And then, or another one like it. And they're just constantly hammering.
Okay. So what do they want from you? If you call them, how do they benefit?
They're trying to just suck you. It's like a phishing scam.
But suck you in and get what? They're not going to take money from you.
Yeah.
They want you to join their class. So some of it also
money to join a class.
Again, part of this is there's battles between different law firms on who gets the most class members. So who becomes counsel and gets the highest position on the gravy train. So this is sort of the maybe unsavory act of inducing people who have not been harmed at all, but they happen to be the member of the class, so they join in. Another thing, there was a law firm, I believe it was in San Diego, maybe Orange County, but I think San Diego, that was well known for going after every time a company would have an earnings surprise and their stock would gap down and have tremendous downward motion. They would immediately go out and hunt for a number of people and come out alleging fraud and bad intent and lack of proper shareholder communications. And again, it's just a racket. Another racket.
Apparently, some judge is going for it and ruling in the favor of a case like that. And to me, it seems like that's the problem. This shouldn't matter if you have 1 million people. If it's a case, judge should throw it out. But apparently, some judge is saying, "Oh yeah, they are damaged." And I think, wasn't this a bench trial? This Apple thing?
Yeah, I believe, just to the judge, Yvonne Rodriguez.
Yeah. So, the judge has already said, yeah, these developers were wronged by Apple. So, I don't think it's not a question of, something's made up. They had to get a judge to go along with it.
Yeah. Let's move it along, guys, because I'm getting emails or notes in the chat room, and I agree.
He's getting from lawyers.
We're turning this into we're doing it again. You can tell we feel passionately about this. And I thought this was going to be a 10-minute discussion. Funny me.
Welcome to the People's Court.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how any of us actually feel about it.
Yeah. Mike, I want to get you in here because you've been quiet all night. I just posted a link into the chat rooms about that our friend Andrew Orr wrote about the Lightning versus USB pros and cons. And the EU trying to legislate this, like Mark said, there was going to be a segue about 10 minutes ago. This idea that they may be trying to push it, Apple to put USB-C on the iPhones. you have any thoughts on this?
USB-C is tricky. One of the more popular articles that I wrote for the suite setup was on how I ran 2 displays from my M1 Mac Mini, because the M1 can only support one external display, but I had an adapter which could go from USB-C. I got the LG 4Ks, and you could have USB power go to the dongle, and then the dongle would convert USB-C to HDMI, and then you could do 2 monitors. However, after I published that article, I have like the first revision of these monitors. Apparently the USB-C spec got upgraded and it no longer worked with the dongle. So the manufacturer actually was like, yeah, we're not actually happy about that article that you wrote, because there's nothing we can do about it, but it doesn't work with this other spec. And I think that USB-C, there's like a million different versions of it and you can't tell which one is which. Yeah. And that is a problem. I would rather have Lightning, because I know exactly what Lightning is. I know exactly which devices that will work with. With USB-C, you really have no idea. Even the webcam I was talking to you guys about before we hit record, that's USB-C, but it's a certain type of USB-C, and you got to plug it into the right port, and you got to use the right cable. And if you plug it directly into the MacBook Pro, no problem. If you plug it into a travel dock, it's not going to work. And the average person isn't going to know enough to figure out why. They just, well, it fits, and I have a hole here and a hole here and a cable that fits them. Like this should work. And it's not that simple. I think they need to land on a single standard for USB-C in terms of the spec, and it's got to be widely adopted before having USB-C on anything Apple related is a benefit, unfortunately.
I think USB-C. They need to get the Thunderbolt chocolate out of the USB-C peanut butter, and everything will be better.
You took right out of my mouth. I was just going to hit that. Thunderbolt is confusion. That's it.
The primary advantage to USB-C over USB-A, the regular rectangles we've all come to know and invariably try to plug in incorrectly and turn over and try again, is that whichever way you put it in, it's the right way. And that's the one thing USB-C has going for it at this point that's good. It's the one thing Lightning has going for it that was one of the huge advantages of moving from 30-pin to Lightning, was a 30-pin cable can only go in the one direction, just like USB-A, and a Lightning cable, as long as you line up the port and the plug, you're solid. If you do it this way, you do it this way, immaterial. As long as you can get it connected because you don't have too much lint in your Lightning port, and that is not a euphemism, then you're fine. So that was the thing. That's the only thing I had going for it. But like, is this a Thunderbolt cable? Nobody knows.
Maybe.
Is this a USB-C cable? Is it power only? Was that called on the go cable that will only charge, that will connect no data? So if you're trying to do something locally, if you try to use it to connect a hard drive, you're out of luck. Right. Like, all of those cables look exactly the same. And that's like, the larger problem is a USB-C problem that needs sorted out. It's not, do we want USB-C on an iPhone? Like, that piece is a completely separate conversation from right now. Everything around USB-C hardware and Thunderbolt and throughput is a disaster area. And that's people who live and breathe this stuff.
Well, even if it was just USB-C and Thunderbolt, yeah, it's a problem that those are the same. They look like the same port. But if that was the only,
right there, you got that identifier right there on the cable. The cable manufacturers and the devices are not very good at putting this identifier on a cable.
You're moving back to 2 ports.
But it's not that simple.
Then you got more ports again, and then you got MacBooks that need to fight with each other in development to add those ports. So
the panel is back in the next edition of MacVoices to wrap up our conversation and debate over USB-C versus Lightning and which way we think this will go, especially with the European Union's recent mandate. That's next time on MacVoices, and I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine,
free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.